certain class. They are people who know everyone. That is, they know where a man is employed, what his salary is, whom he knows, whom he married, what money his wife had, who are his cousins and second cousins, etc., etc. These men generally have about £100 a year to live on, and they spend their whole time and talents in the amassing of this style of knowledge, which they reduce, or raise, to the standard of a science. During the latter part of the conversation, the black-haired young man had become very impatient. He stared out of the window and fidgeted, and evidently longed for the end of the journey. He was very absent, he would appear to listen, and heard nothing, and he would laugh of a sudden, evidently with no idea of what he was laughing about. "Excuse me," said the red-nosed man to the young fellow with the bundle, rather suddenly. "Whom have I the honour to be talking to?" "Prince Lef Nicolaievitch Muishkin," replied the latter, with perfect readiness. "Prince Muishkin? Lef Nicolaievitch? I don't know, I'm sure. I may say I have never heard of such a person," said the clerk thoughtfully. "At least the name, I admit, is historical. Karamsin must mention the family name, of course, in his history. But as an individual, one never hears of any Prince Muishkin nowadays." "Of course not," replied the prince. "There are none except myself. I believe I am the last and only one. As to my forefathers, they have always been a poor lot. My own father was a sub-lieutenant in the army. I don't know how Mrs. Epanchin comes into the Muishkin family, but she is descended from the Princess Muishkin, and she too is the last of her line." "And did you learn science and all that with your professor over there?" asked the black-haired passenger. "Oh yes, I did learn a little, but—" "I've never learned anything whatever," said the other. "Oh, but I learnt very little, you know," added the prince, as though excusing himself. "They could not teach me very much on account of my illness." "Do you know the Rogojins?" asked his questioner abruptly. "No, I don't, not at all. I hardly know anyone in Russia. Why, is that your name?" "Yes, I am Rogojin, Parfen Rogojin." "Parfen Rogojin? Dear me! Then don't you belong to those very Rogojins, perhaps?" began the clerk, with a very perceptible increase of civility in his tone. "Yes, those very ones," interrupted Rogojin impatiently and with scant courtesy. I may remark that he had not once taken any notice of the blotchy-faced passenger, and had hitherto addressed all his remarks direct to the prince. "Dear me, is it possible?" observed the clerk, while his face assumed an expression of great deference and servility, if not of absolute alarm. "What? A son of that very Semyon Rogojin, hereditary honourable citizen, who died a month or so ago and left 2.5 millions of roubles." "And how do you know that he left 2.5 millions of roubles?" asked Rogojin disdainfully, and not deigning so much as to look at the other. "However, it's true enough that my father died a month ago, and that here am I returning from Pskov a month after, with hardly a boot to my foot. They've treated me like a dog. I've been ill of fever at Pskov the whole time, and not a line nor farthing of money have I received from my mother or my confounded brother. And now you'll have 1 million roubles at least, goodness gracious me!" exclaimed the clerk, rubbing his hands. "5 weeks since I was just like yourself," continued Rogojin, addressing the prince, "with nothing but a bundle and the clothes I wore. I ran away from my father and came to Pskov, to my aunt's house, where I caved in at once with fever, and he went and died while I was away. All honour to my respected father's memory, but he uncommonly nearly killed me all the same. Give you my word, prince, if I hadn't cut and run then, when I did, he'd have murdered me like a dog." "I suppose you angered him somehow?" asked the prince, looking at the millionaire with considerable curiosity. But though there may have been something remarkable in the fact that this man was heir to millions of roubles, there was something about him which surprised and interested the prince more than that. Rogojin, too, seemed to have taken up the conversation with unusual alacrity. It appeared that he was still in a considerable state of excitement, if not absolutely feverish, and was in real need of someone to talk to, for the mere sake of talking, a safety valve to his agitation. As for his red-nosed neighbour, the latter, since the information as to the identity of Rogojin hung over him, seemed to be living on the honey of his words and in the breath of his nostrils, catching at every syllable as though it were a pearl of great price. "Oh yes, I angered him, I certainly did anger him," replied Rogojin. "But what puts me out so is my brother. Of course my mother couldn't do anything, she's too old, and whatever brother Shonka says is law for her. But why couldn't he let me know? He sent a telegram, they say. What's the good of a telegram? It frightened my aunt so that she sent it back to the office unopened, and there it's been ever since. It's only thanks to Koniev that I heard at all. He wrote me all about it. He says my brother cut off the gold tassels from my father's coffin at night because they're worth a lot of money, says he. Why, I can get him sent off to Siberia for that alone if I like. It's sacrilege. Here, you, Scarecrow," he added, addressing the clerk at his side, "is it sacrilege or not, by law?" "Sacrilege, certainly. Certainly sacrilege," said the latter. "And it's Siberia for sacrilege, isn't it?" "Undoubtedly so. Siberia, of course." "They will think that I'm still ill," continued Rogojin to the prince. "But I sloped off quietly, seedy as I was, took the train and came away. Ah, brother Shonka, you'll have to open your gates and let me in, my boy. I know he told tales about me to my father. I know that well enough. But I certainly did rile my father about Nastasia Philipovna. That's very sure. That was my own doing." "Nastasia Philipovna," said the clerk, as though trying to think out something. "Come, you know nothing about her," said Rogojin impatiently. "And supposing I do know something," observed the other triumphantly. "Bosh! There are plenty of Nastasia Philipovnas. And what an impertinent beast you are," he added angrily. "I thought some creature like you would hang on to me as soon as I got hold of my money." "Oh, but I do know, as it happens," said the clerk in an aggravating manner. "Lebedeff knows all about her. You are pleased to reproach me, your excellency. But what if I prove that I am right after all? Nastasia Philipovna's family name is Barashkov. I know, you see, and she is a very well-known lady indeed, and comes of a good family too. She is connected with one Totsky, Afanasy Ivanovitch, a man of considerable property, a director of companies and so on, and a great friend of General Epanchin, who is interested in the same matters as he is." "My eyes," said Rogojin, really surprised at last. "The devil take the fellow! How does he know that?" "Why, he knows everything. Lebedeff knows everything. I was a month or two with Lihachof after his father died, your excellency, and while he was knocking about (he's in the debtor's prison now), I was with him, and he couldn't do a thing without Lebedeff. And I got to know Nastasia Philipovna and several people at that time." "Nastasia Philipovna? Why, you don't mean to say that she and Lihachof—" cried Rogojin, turning quite pale. "No, nothing of the sort, I assure you," said Lebedeff hastily. "Oh dear no, not for the world. Totski's the only man with any chance there. Oh no. He takes her to his box at the opera at the French theatre of an evening, and the officers and people all look at her and say, 'By Jove, there's the famous Nastasia Philipovna.' But no one ever gets any further than that, for there is nothing more to say." "Yes, it's quite true," said Rogojin, frowning gloomily. So Zaleshoff told me. I was walking about the Nevsky one fine